What up, friends? Robin Black here. Excited about the martial arts, as I often am. We got my friends on Periscope here live. Usually takes us about half a day or so to get this up on YouTube and podcast. So we go live on Periscope, so people who are on the front end of this, they can hang, and sometimes they give me good feedback. This is Water, the study of martial arts. This is a great pleasure for me to look at fighting in this way. It's part art analysis, it's part systems analysis, it's macro, it's big picture, but it's informed by moments and small things and changes. And by studying martial arts in this way, we can study how technology changes or life changes or your job changes or anything. And because you see the flow, of how change affects change and how beliefs affect change. All right, we'll get right into it here this week. Water number 5, Tony Ferguson submitted Kevin Lee. Now also Demetrius Johnson submitted Ray Borg with a beautiful, I don't know if you'd call it a stunt submission, but it was pretty flashy. We'll touch on that for sure also. But Water, we want to look at how these things affect each other and what is the big picture. Because when you watch a fight, you'll look and go, wow, you know, this guy landed a flying elbow. I've never seen this particular thing before. And there are innovative moments in fights all the time. Or you'll say, wow, you know, all of a sudden, 3-4 years ago, McGregor comes out and he's fighting at a slightly different distance. Holly Holm is looking to beat Ronda Rousey by fighting at a different distance. We start discussing range management, distance management, these types of ideas, and they become a big part of fighting as you see it happen. We called it the movement. Suddenly Stephen Thompson, everybody's moving from the outside. If you look at fights 5 years ago, 6 years ago, then you jump ahead to last year, and it's different. They fight in a different range. They move a lot more. It's not, let's walk into the range at which boxers and kickboxers fight. Let's play at a different distance. And if you don't understand it, you're fucked. The game changes that way. And most of the highest level coaches and most of the highest level fighters are able to see something different. Maybe something that to most of us doesn't look like much, or it looks like a one-off. Somebody backs up, lands a punch backing up. Oh, wow, cool, he landed a punch backing up. To others, it's, you know what? We've been dealing with pressure so much, and pressure is winning. Aldo, Barao, Verdum, RDA, all of these guys are winning with pressure. And we're trying to beat them with more pressure. Maybe we have to figure out how to draw and use the art of drawing to pull them into space and penalize them for pressuring. McGregor, knocking out Aldo in 13 seconds, was where it all kind of came together. That's a movement, that's a change, that's a river of change that you see within fighting. And a big one now, we just mentioned Tony, Eddie Bravo. I just got off the phone with Eddie. Thank you, by the way, Eddie, for taking the time. I've always admired your work, and you're a cool dude, and I appreciate you, always have. And you've given me a little bit of extra insight, especially to reinforce something we've seen happening for a long time that was a inarguable thing. You hear many people talking about it, about the guard. So let's talk quickly about, and I'm going to do my very best to pass what Eddie just spoke with me about only minutes ago to you as concisely as possible. But I'm sure if you go and you look, Eddie's probably already been on many podcasts where you can hear his voice saying these things. But I've spoken with Eddie and trained at his gym and done a seminar with him and studied his system for long enough that I understand where he's at, and he just gave me a lot of great insight. But so we're going to look at what was happening in that fight, and that's important. But if all we do is say, oh, cool, that happened, maybe we can do it. Oh, no, they stopped us. That's great. It's fun. It's neat. You're revealing. You're peeling it back and seeing, oh, so that's why this happened. That is amazing. But the big lessons for a 17-year-old fighter now, or for one of these top coaches in the world who wants to be on the front end in 2 years and 5 years and 12 years still, or again, or reach that level, because there are coaches that we know are brilliant. Fighters know, we've been in their gyms. They just don't have that one athlete yet, but they've got a 20-year-old who's brilliant That coach can't just teach that 20-year-old what they've seen George St. Pierre learn. They have to understand what will work when that 20-year-old is 26. And you don't just teach him to win the fight in front of him. You teach him and you to understand how to win in 2022. So that's the long draw that you're looking for. But let's talk just first about Tony submitting Kevin. So I asked Eddie about the submission and about the broad strokes of it first. The broad strokes, and he's got such a great mind. His idea of broad strokes is, well, what's the real situation? Like, what's the big picture of the situation? And big picture is so key. Because if you got an A and a B, and you don't understand that you're at B and work that flowchart spider web of it, and you're over here, doesn't matter. You already started at the wrong place. So Eddie very quickly, and Tony and their whole team analyzes one big question. How and why are we here? So Tony was winning the striking battle on the feet. And I don't even like to quite, these days, I find it limiting to say the striking battle on the feet, although I know that's a good way to understand it. But there are moments when both your feet or one of your feet are on the mat, standing, you're able to push off the ground, and then there are moments when there are not. When those feet are on the ground, sometimes we go, we're winning the striking. But there's all kinds of grappling going on up there too. There's all kinds of psychology. There's all kinds of push and pull and accessing the back. It isn't just striking. But for the sake of argument for now, let's leave that as a analysis for another day and simplify it. And why do I pause on these things sometimes? Because again, the goal is to be better in 5 years or 10 years. And that means we have to have a better understanding. And if we compartmentalize something like he's winning the striking battle, that's true. It's true-ish. It's mostly true. It's almost true. But it's not fully true. And what happens then is we look at it and say, striking, grappling. And now we've limited ourselves. We're categorized it too hard. But for this sake of argument, he's winning on the feet, beating him up, piecing him up. That's a conversation for another day. But there was a range and a distance between the two of them, and the way Tony manipulates that distance, that although Kevin looked phenomenal, fit, strong, smart, making good choices based on the realities that he's normally facing, but Tony's a different reality. So anyways, we'll move on to that for another day, because today is about the guard and the principles of fighting off of your back and the understanding of what does and doesn't work and how our understanding of that affects the choices that we make. But so Tony is, for the simple place to start, he's winning when we're out in space. So Kevin now wants to put Tony on his back and keep him there. Okay? And that's important. That's something we need to understand before we start branching off into where we're going. Is Tony trying to keep Kevin there? Or, I'm sorry, is Kevin trying to keep Tony there? Or is Tony okay there, but really wants to get back up? So again, for simplistic purposes, if Tony was winning when they stood out in space with each other, I'm sorry, I'm moving too quickly. My apologies. If Kevin was winning when they're standing out in space together, he may put Tony down, but he doesn't need him there. He's winning. He's winning when they're out in space. Or Tony may pull him down. If Tony were to pull him down, Kevin would quite simply be thinking, I'm winning when we stand up. So that's a very big difference. Kevin Lee, well, quotes, for simplistic purposes, is losing on the feet, puts Tony down, and wants to keep him there. Okay, so that's where we need to start. Because that's the situation that Tony found himself in while on his back. Now, when that's the case, typically the standard default thinking has become, okay, I'll get back up. In fact, this is where we diverge from what has been pretty standard thinking all over the MMA world, not exclusively, but a lot, and Eddie Bravo's thinking right there. And that, to recap, Kevin wants Tony down because Tony is winning when they're up. The typical thinking is, I'm Tony, I'm winning when we're up. Kevin put me down, I'm going to get back up. In fact, that thinking has become the predominant thinking of the fighting organism. And I understand, and I say predominant, by all means, I love to interact with people, especially fighters and coaches. So if you want to send me a message and say, my coach doesn't think that way, I know there are many. But if you gather 100 of the top 100 gyms and the top 100 fighters and the top 100 coaches, and you say, you're winning the fight on the feet, your opponent puts you down, you're in guard, what do? For sure 90, maybe 93 or 94 say, we get up. We get up, we stand up, we fight to our feet. In fact, there are many gyms, many, I'm going to say 80 to 90 out of that 100, even if you're winning on the feet, and you put me down on my back, we still think I'm going to get back up. Now, in the getting back up, we'll try to strike, or we'll try to find a moment to get a single or access your back or change it. But it starts with getting back up. So whether, for most gyms, whether I'm winning standing or I'm losing standing, either way, if I'm on my back, I get back up. Okay, so I hope that, I know that it can sound simple, but because I'm excited, I want to make sure that that makes sense without sounding like I'm trying to be overly simple. But one last time, regardless of whether you're winning or I'm winning, if I'm on my back, we got to get back up. 9 out of 10 fighters, 9 out of 10 quality, high-end, super smart coaches have believed that. And why? Because they believe, and you hear it, you heard it a year ago, you heard it 2 years ago. I heard it from coaches that I've talked to in the last 6 months. The guard is dead. The guard is dead, okay? We can't be in guard. Why can't we? Why do they believe the guard is dead? Why is this a very universal belief? Well, you're in my guard. I'm Tony or anybody else. I'm flat on my back. 1, well, the guy on top is winning. And 2, I'm kind of defenseless. And 3, the people on top have gotten so good at defending submissions that I'm going to throw up submissions and get passed or just get beat up while I'm trying to submit you. So in general, the belief that the guard is dead comes from the people on the bottom, the coaches of the people on top saying, you get on top at all costs and you'll win. And the coaches of the people on the bottom saying, it's too hard. We can't submit anymore. No, look, nobody's catching anyone in submissions. When's the last time you saw an armbar? When's the last time you saw a triangle? I think we only seen one omoplata. Is that Ben Saunders guy? You know what I mean? You start to believe it. It's dead. It doesn't work. And that's not true. It's never true. This will be an ongoing part of the conversation for as long as we study martial arts. There'll be moments where we get so into a thought process that we forget some basic truths. We'll see this over and over again. The front kick doesn't work. You can't throw a front kick. Brilliant people, winners, world champions. Bas Rutten, former world champion, one of the greats of his era. When you talk to Bas now, and you sit down, and I'm such a fan of his as a person and as a thinker, and talk to him, it's like, hey, Bas, remember when you believed this? He'll be like, yeah, we were crazy, but we didn't know. Because there's lots of interviews of Bas in the old days saying the jab doesn't work in MMA. You know why? Because it didn't really. It didn't. The comprehension, the way that people fought, the commitment to the hard shot, the idea that the way they threw the jab, less evolved, didn't get a lot of pop on it. It just didn't seem to work. Fucking works now, obviously. Jab's a big part of it. This will always happen. The front kick doesn't work. You can't throw a spinning hook kick in fighting. I mean, just in the, last 10 years, we've had a million examples of that. Use the can opener. Oh, you can't use the can opener anymore. Never cross your feet while doing armbar. Anyone who's been studying martial arts for any length of time, every one of these I'm saying, you're like, oh yeah, remember when I started training, they said you could never cross your legs in an armbar. So this is an ongoing state. And while this is all ongoing, some of the greatest coaches, the best fighters, and these are geniuses. Please don't think I'm undermining them. This is human nature. They make that choice. The guard is dead. It doesn't work anymore. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling statement for a little while. Why? Because if everybody believes it, it's true. They stop really committing to that armbar. They stop, when they throw up a triangle, they do it knowing they won't really get it. In the rooms, people stop doing it, and everyone gets really good at standing up. The fight, the battle, the guard starts to go from this amazing, complex world of its own martial art, as if everyone does, every martial art. There are battles you can do with one underhook and head position with thousands of variations if you want to explore it long enough. And here is this beautiful position where I take your upper body, and with a closed guard, I eliminate your lower body. You still use it to press off your feet and your knee position and everything. But for our new arena of fighting, my legs are there, all of my body and my upper body, and all you have is two arms. Now, that was especially the case early, but then people learned leverage and all these different things, which is why they started to shut down the guard player. But the guard is by definition an offensive position. And here is the simplest reason. Much like a mount, it's a reverse mount. Much like a mount, I have segmented your body off, where as long as I position myself right, you only have two weapons, your two arms. Or four, if we want to say your two arms and your two elbows. There's sides of, but essentially you have two appendages and I have four. I don't know how this looks here, probably stupid, but if I put my feet in your hips, or close them, or put my knees here, I'm using all four of my limbs against two of yours. By definition, that's an offensive position. It's an advantageous position. It's a control position. It's a manipulative position. And we just dismissed it. The guard is dead. In guard, we just get back up. Or while we're getting back up, we see if we can switch that single, or we lace his leg, or we'll just get out of the guard. And as we get out of the guard and one or both of our feet are on the ground, in that moment we'll start attacking or moving or trying to access. But people just stop doing it. And here's the problem. They believed that was so for a long time. The last 5 years, you go into gyms. I've had this conversation, by the way, with Firas, Duke, Dean Thomas, Mike Brown, I think Rogan on his podcast, Eddie Bravo. Those are just the ones that come to mind. Never mind that 6 fighters, the smart thinkers. Over the last 5 years, I kept going, but if everybody believes the guard is dead, Adam Zuchek, Lee Meehan, just on and on. I've had these conversations. Ryan Hall in Montreal, I chatted. This conversation I've been having for the last 4 or 5 years, because you're looking at it going, because you just see these cycles. Someone believes something, they act as if. They make it so, and then somebody else doesn't believe it, and they get shittier at something. So think of it. And I talked to Eddie at length about this morning. He's like, if you can go and say to a fighter, this complex spider web of stuff doesn't work anymore. Learn to get up, learn to keep him stable, learn to posture or stay with your head buried in his sternum, control his armpits and his biceps, position your hips, press off your feet, the ball of your feet in such a way as to shut down part of his guard. That's all you got to learn. Just do that a lot. Forever. Besides, remember, Bruce Lee said, don't fear the man with 1,000 things, fear the man who does one thing 1,000 times. He didn't mean at the highest level just fucking let a whole universe go. So Eddie's very humble, and Eddie is very complimentary, and Eddie is just about the growth of this. He's obsessed with the guard, right? And jiu-jitsu and fighting in general. But in this particular arena, he's been able to look and go, I can't believe these motherfuckers think it's dead. So what happens when they think it's dead? Like I said, when you're coach, you got to master this whole fucking thing, or your coach can say, when you're on top, we're going to alternate between these 3 or 4 things. Armpits or biceps, head under the chin or head in sternum, or posture up high. We're going to crowd one hip, or we're going to crowd the other, and every now and again, we're going to stand. We'll worry about that one sweep. We'll throw punches. When that guy throws up those submissions that we all know don't work anymore, we'll pass. The guy on the bottom, it's like, listen, remember how when you were doing jiu-jitsu for the last 8 years, you're a brown belt now, remember how you learned all of those complex things, different sweeps, different ways to elevate, all that kind of stuff? Remember all that shit? Not in MMA. Now what you do is try to make space. If you can get that underhook, you're going to heist that hip. Once you get up, he's going to respond this way. We're going to start that game, and we're going to master that game. All of a sudden, there's so much to learn. And again, Eddie was talking about this morning from a very just curious perspective. There is so much to learn in every position, and your health and recovery and diet and fucking now Instagram and all these things. That's what being a fighter is. You mean to tell me my trusted coach can tell me I don't have to worry about this one thing? Great. Fuck, thank God. It's one less thing to worry about. And don't judge any of these people. This is a large percentage of them. There is all this to do. If we do start allotting, so you only have a certain amount of mind share. You have 21 hours a week. Maybe, you know? You have 11 sessions a week. And the coaches have to teach all of those. Then they have a life. Then many of them are busy with another business or Instagram or whatever. And they have to assess if they can just say, these other sub-genres have become more important. Let's focus on that. Don't worry about this. But the second the global audience or the global, players, fighters, coaches, whatever, say, don't worry about this one, that's where the gold is. Because there's some fucking Eddie Bravo, Tony Ferguson, Ben Saunders, and their whole team who's gone, I can't believe finally the time has come where people are purposefully getting worse at dealing with what we do. Imagine that. Because what's happening in those rooms, you tell me, you tell Mark, you tell this, you tell my Joe Rogan Cup, you tell all of us, guys, when you're on the bottom in guard, we're going to work our stand-ups. We're going to get back to our feet. We're going to get up. You know what that does for all our training partners? They never get attacked with these complex submissions and sweeps anymore. Right? Think about it. This is how and why this is happening. Because not every room, again, I apologize. I know many of you are training in environments where it's like the guard is a priority. And if you are, just know that you are at an advantage there now, because many of them have been training to only keep you down, to hold you there. To hold you there, you're trying to get up, they're trying to hold you there. And sorry for the long route to get here, but that's where Tony Ferguson found himself. Kevin's job was to keep him there. And what did that do? And again, Eddie told me this morning. Eddie, quite correctly, identified, wait a second, he wants to keep us there. What would be the two, and of course there are variations in between. It's not black and white, it's all gray, colors of gray. But Tony and their team and Eddie, they're like, okay, he wants to keep you there. So what does that do now? Well, if he was trying to get back up, again, this probably looks really stupid, but imagine that this is his body. We wrap our closed guard around his body. How's that look? It's kind of working, right? And we have to keep him down here. So then we would start finding different ways using a rubber guard is how they do it from that camp. And obviously they're one of the best guard playing camps in the world right now, on the cutting edge. They have the lightweight champion or the interim lightweight champion done this way. But if he's trying to get up, we need to break him down and keep him there. But he's not trying to get up. He's trying to keep us down. So we don't need to stop him from backing out. We can open these. As we open them, we place them in his hips. This probably doesn't look quite as stupid, right? Imagine, this is his hips. Now, I have his upper body, and I can push him away because I'm controlling here. As I push him away, he pushes back in. Over and over and over again. What did we just do there? That's always been there. Why don't we want to play the guard? Well, we get beat up there. The judges see it, and besides, if we get too hurt, we won't be able to do the other thing. Bullshit. Push away here. The leverage, pushing off the feet. It used to be believed, or it's still believed by some, it's like, well, he has that ability to posture up and generate all this force. Boom, boom, and it's true. But now we're using our feet and his hips, and our whole body is able to generate that force now. It's at least an even fight. We're on our back, yes, but we're in an even fight, and maybe an advantageous fight, because while many others have been going, well, hit him if you can, but keep him down, these guys have been going, they're going to keep us down. And when they do, as they're not analyzing this position necessarily any further, we'll innovate here. Now, there is another position that happens in here where our knees are now flared. We can, and Eddie was talking about this with me this morning. I want to make sure I keep crediting the man here. These knees create space. I can push off with that too. That takes your elbows out of it. In fact, I'm controlling your head and the distance from elbow to head. Eddie told me about this in specifics this morning. You have punches, but I'm manipulating your position. So as we look at it, we're going to talk about the triangle. People are going to break down the omoplata attack. Most of that stuff you just need to go get Eddie's book or follow his online course. He'll explain to you the game of attacking this side with this, the omoplata, which I believe he did, coming inside, and at pushing this side with the shin to make space here, that if you respond too much, the leg goes over to the triangle, and if you respond to pull away, the attack, the omoplata. It's very, very simple. Now, simple in that simple principle, but there's thousands of little complexities that you have to learn. And meanwhile, you're getting fucking elbowed in the head, right? How the fuck did we just dismiss this position for so long? And over we're going to see this. This is no judgment. These are not errors. It's like, holy fuck, how did all these people get it wrong? This is human nature. We can't do it all. There's too much. Fighting, there's too much. These guys, their capacity to learn has grown exponentially in the last 2 years. What the number 45 guy in the welterweight division knows, the amount of knowledge he has, the amount of understanding, the big picture analysis, the way that things flow into each other, principles of if I push here, you pull, all of that. They know more than they've ever known. But then the innovators are going to keep peeling back different things. And you're watching 27 things all changing, and you have to figure out where to allot your time and energy. And so we all just agreed, like most things, they're agreements without discussion. It's just an agreement that happens without discussion, so it works. If you guys keep just trying to stand up in the guard, we'll keep trying to punch you and hold you down, and we'll all do that together. And as a result, the guard is dead because you don't really believe in it. And I'm trying to keep you down and you're trying to stand up. And the whole thing just starts evolving as if the truth is that the guard is dead. That's not true. The guard is an offensive position. The guard is an offensive position. The first day somebody pushed somebody on the ground and they crawled on top of them, started smashing them in prehistoric times, the day the guy on the ground put his legs around that guy or controlled his hips or put his feet inside the thighs or in some way got his feet involved with his hands and the other guy only had his hands, it became an offensive position and it will be forever. And I just said an absolute. He's like, absolutes, that can't be so. No, it will stop being one. Then it'll become one. Then it'll stop being one. Then it'll become one. And that will happen from year to year and sometimes from month to month on a subway, sometimes from roll to roll in a gym. Because that's what happens. Why is it an offensive position? I have more of my body than you do. And the days you figure out how to use, and that's what the wrestlers did. Kevin Lee, high-level wrestler, amazing positioning, amazing balance, tons of leverage, great mind, knows what he's doing, trained by the best. When people submitted everybody, the Matt Hugheses, and before that it was the Colemans, and the wrestlers who understood leverage would get up onto a ball of the foot, control that, and by using leverage to get these things involved again, using the mat, they diminished your advantage of 4 limbs for you against 2 for me. Because it was 2 for me inside and 2 from the outside that manipulated the whole connection. But it's an offensive position. It is. So, it's so beautiful to see it back. And when I say it's back, is one submission say it's back? No, but winning a interim lightweight title, getting an omoplata on a guy that he has to work his way out of, attacking the armbar, sweeping from guard, and ultimately finishing him in a triangle in a fight that you're winning. And you could deny that. A lot of people do that in almost anything. Oh, well, that was a fluke, or that's a one-off. Fucking, I use this example all the time. Dominic Cruz dominated for years, and people are like, oh, that's just that guy. He's really different. No, you could learn that too. What is he doing? That's not just some weird thing he does. That's a system. That's a base of knowledge. That's a collection of skills and ideas, right? So this is what martial arts is. It's not always slide your knee through this way, or never elbow from the back, or the guard is dead, or only stand up from guard. And again, coaches much, much, much more educated and knowledgeable than me have told me in dozens of conversations over the last few years, the guard's dead, man, just you use it to get up. And I just couldn't accept it. And clearly Eddie Brava it thrilled him to hear that. Oh, great. God, I'm going to build, me and my team are just going to get better and better at this. And by the time they clue back in, they'll have atrophied in their ability to deal with it. I had a conversation with Faraz maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. I've been in Montreal a lot doing the George documentary and others. And Faraz was talking about this very idea. I talked with Dean Thomas a lot about this idea. This understanding of when this happens, the next move and the next move used to be the next move and the next move. If I go and attack your Kimura, you do this and then I'll do that. I anticipate 2 moves ahead of you. Now they're anticipating 2 moves in how they're going to train their thought. And this conversation is the conversation happening outside of the drama and the Twitter beefs and all the shit that is in our diet. This is what's actually happening. And Faraz was saying, hey, look, Jiu-Jitsu, and he was talking not about the guard, although he's a big believer in the guard. Although even still in that gym, like others, they would spend a lot of time getting up. And I'm not saying don't do that. But as Eddie said to me today, sometimes you can't. You'd love to be able to get up whenever you want, but what if you can't? What if that game, he's better than you? Do we just go, well, fuck it, we lost. Guard's dead, and I can't stand up. So I'm bitched. No. There's a whole world there. And it's an old world. Go study jiu-jitsu. Go into a class. Not every not every school, but a very common one is, one of the early things you'll learn, you'll get into a guard, and they'll teach you to sit up and try a kimura, and then sit up and try a guillotine, and then sit up and try a sweep. Because they work great together. You learn it from day one in a lot of cases. It's beautiful, man. The guard is beautiful. Jiu-Jitsu is beautiful. A lot of people are going to be submitting from there. Maybe not in the next few weeks, but in the next few months, guys who grew up devastating guard players who somewhere along the line, they just bought into the idea, oh, okay, I can't do that. It's like, oh, fucking right, I can. Not only that, but most of these guys are not defending many attacks from guard because most of their teammates are just standing up all the time. You're going to see it because it's there. It's always been there. It's not some new thing. It's an old thing. Then where do we go from here? What if you can't get guard? And obviously we all want to see Tony fight Conor. I hate the word obviously. I just used it. It's very few things that we say are obvious are actually obvious. What I was going to say is many of us want to see Tony fight Conor. Fucking love to see that. But I also want to see him fight Khabib. From my nerdy curiosity, you don't see a lot of people even get to guard with Khabib. So now it becomes about getting guard or re-guarding. Could Tony elbow the shit out of Khabib? Could he sweep him? Could he submit him? Maybe. But if you're Khabib, you're like, I will not let him get guard. He doesn't let too many people get guard. So then so we'll be like, see, that's the answer. You just don't let him get guard. What do you think these guys are doing? They don't just all start in guard. Go to one of Eddie's classes. I've been lucky enough to go a couple of times. Try to pass him. Try to maintain side control. You don't become as brilliant at this entire flowchart of things without knowing how to get there and make you think you're passing and then penalize you for that. So it's not just, well, they're great guard players, so don't let them get guard. They're great at getting it too. They're great at keeping it. They're great at regaining it. They're great at letting you think you passed it and then putting yourself in trouble. And this is the problem. Last thing I talked to Eddie about today, I'm like, it won't take long till people will go, oh shit, yeah, that's where the gold is. Most people have been just, not giving enough effort and attention to this area. So if we do that, it'll be an advantage. I said, you'll see many others start going, oh shit, we got some good guard players and maybe we have let this lax a little bit. How do you stay ahead of them? And he's like, I'm not worried about that. And he wasn't being cocky, wasn't being arrogant. He was literally just saying, this is the beginning of something that they've concentrated on mastering for going on a couple of decades now. So they just love to see more of this. But you can't just say, well, I'll just fight him from the back or side control. Because the act of getting here is its own universe of skills. And that's when we're going to get to see. Yeah, let's see Tony, red panty night, maybe he takes out Conor. Maybe Conor takes him out and says, see, I actually was, the best. Maybe. But the one I want to see is when Tony finally does fight Khabib. Because guard, this guy on your back, controlling your wrist or taking back hip or fighting from side control, he's got a fucking beautiful side control. Something else, by the way, this is a conversation for another day, but Demetrius Johnson, of course, that arm bar from the throw is beautiful, but a lot of guys in jiu-jitsu gyms have been doing that every minute of every day since Saturday night because that exists. You just can't usually do it. You have to either be so much better than a guy or so much better than him and fatigue him to such a level that you can do anything you want. And that's the mastery of Demetrius Johnson. But besides that moment, go back and watch his mastery from side control. It's hard to even maintain side control. Never mind mutilate people from there or fatigue them or hurt them or crush them or dominate them. So that game is going to be the next thing. If you're going to submit me from guard and we are going to be fighting on the ground longer, and that is going to happen because not everybody's getting up, who can pass that guard, who can fight from half guard, and who can get to that side control, very underused position. Also, and I'm going to wrap this up soon, but the mount. People who mastered the mount, you see it. But even that, the whole game on the ground, at its average level, because because everybody's focused so much on getting back up, staying up, and fighting there are some that are far better than others on the ground. Some that are far better than others. And we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see a lot more of that. Who's Cub fighting? He's fighting that killer, long-haired guy who submits everybody in the 3rd round, Brian Ortega. I'm going to spend some time on that one. Cub Swanson's my very favorite athlete to watch. And I watched him grapple a number of rounds when I was in Albuquerque and analyze the way he moves. And I'm going to message him and chat with him and pick his brain a little bit about looking at that one. Because this guy's high level. And now all of a sudden we're already seeing history repeat itself. If this guy can't get Cub down, or can't keep him down, or underestimates Cub, he's in a lot of fucking trouble, because on the feet it's a problem, and what if he isn't as ahead on the ground? But what if he is? We're going to see these again. So it's so strange to me how these things repeat itself. And it's also one of the reasons why digging deeper and finding the right language and honoring these things properly is really important to me, because the changes are so dramatic. But if we haven't understood them, we could still say, well, it's a stylistic matchup, striker versus grappler. And we wouldn't even be that wrong if we just said it long enough. Eventually, we will see those subdominances return, those subgenres where you're better at this. We're great at everything. We're better than George was in his prime, all of us. And yet you still find subspecialties that we compete against each other. So this is where it's going. And it's very exciting. When I did Water Number 1, it was brought to me by doing these more deep, in-depth, combining the physical and the technical of what we talked about with the guard here today, and the insights that Eddie gave me into the how and why of the tactics and the skills, but combining it with the thought process, the belief system, the philosophy, the desire to grow and identify where we can grow and how fast we can do that while Mighty Mouse is growing this fast, but he's that far ahead of us. How on earth could somebody right now beat him? Well, the guy who's going to beat Mighty Mouse, if he stays around long enough, is 18 right now. Somewhere they're planning, how can we figure out how to beat Demetrius Johnson in 2022? Especially if he could just slow down just a little bit. Maybe he gets old. Maybe his back starts to ache. And we just get better to how the game will look then. It's a scary thing. But we will continue to see these beautiful jumps within the sport. And I'll continue to try my best to dig into it and call some of the best fighters or coaches. I know this is on some levels specific. We talked about the guard, but on other levels esoteric. But it's what interests me now. And we'll circle back. We'll take everything we learned in these ways and in the systems analysis type approach, and we'll bring it back and we'll apply it to why does this jab work and what happens when he got hit and how did he train. And we will circle back with this stuff. But this is where I'm curious now, and I'm glad that there are some others. I'm glad that you stayed with me for this whole podcast on iTunes or here on YouTube or on Periscope with my friends. I've been hanging out with them a lot live on Periscope. I thank you for giving me the chance to do this. I thank Eddie for taking the time to call me this morning in LA, and that guy just had another big breakthrough. Dude's shown it himself, fighting with greats, Royler Gracie twice, one, and the other one, I think it was the time limit was up, but he was the dominant one. Proved his system multiple times himself. Ben Saunders got the only omoplata, I think maybe ever still in the UFC. Tony Ferguson just won a lightweight title against a dominant, physical, young, skillful guy who grew up wrestling, physical, submitted him.
Also
Korean Zombie, the Twister. I mean, I'm a bit of an Eddie nut hugger, but anyone who's denying that right now is insane. But there's denialists of everything. Eddie himself isn't quite sure the earth is round. Come on, Eddie, fuck. But there's denialists of everything. But don't deny that the guard is this incredible, beautiful, offensive fighting position. It's an honor to discuss it. It was an honor to talk to Eddie. Cheers to my man, Joe. And we will be back. I'm going to continue this deep dive into martial arts. It's a great gift of my life to be able to do so. I hope we can apply these ideas to other areas when we try to look at how other things change. And yeah, just message me on Instagram at RobinBlackMMA. And if you really enjoyed this, we have a Patreon page, patreon.com/RobinBlack, where people have supported us in our travels to go and explore these things on a deeper level. I thank you guys a great deal. This will be up as soon as possible. Thank you guys. Blackout.